Welcome to the Restless Creatives podcast. Comfortable chats with inspirational creatives. Hosted by three self-confessed restless creatives, Lucy Hunter, Fiona Pickles and Bridget Girling. This week we chat with our very own Lucy Hunter, where she finally reveals a very exciting project she's been working on over the last year. We also discuss her many other amazing achievements that have all led to this point in her career. RHS Gardens and gold medals, her exquisite storytelling photography, and a hugely successful landscape design business. Oh, and of course she also just happens to design with flowers rather beautifully too. Right, Lucy, what have you got to tell us? This is all about you today.
It's Lucy time.
It's Lucy's looking hunted. That's my only joke of the day.
Yeah.
You didn't even laugh at it.
The doorbell's going. And
is it Mr. Tesco's again?
I'm so
or
sorry.
The
The headphones aren't working.
I have to go. There's a handyman at the door that needs my help right now.
Nice. Lucky old you.
I know.
Oh,
It's been a long old lockdown. Just take your kicks where you get them.
Yes. Well, talking of kicks, Lucy,
Yes.
whilst you've been in this long old lockdown,
Yes.
how have you kept yourself inspired?
Inspired. So I've eaten quite a lot of chocolate.
Yeah, that's
Same.
before Easter.
Exactly. And drunk a fair amount of alcohol. How have I kept my inspired? Well, I've sort of relished the fact that all our workshops were postponed. So, any travelling was postponed, anything like that. And thought, blimey, how am I going to keep myself occupied? Especially in the first lockdown when we had really, But I had all these tester pots because I buy lots of tester pots, and I thought, what can I do with them? And I thought, I know, I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint a mural on my wall. And I've never really had, because I painted, a long time ago. I painted at university.
You used to do murals, didn't you?
Well, I did. When I left university, I did a few children's playrooms with pirates on the high sea and things like that.
Possibly not quite what the thing you're looking for these days then.
No. So I did. I sort of dabbled with it, but I never really saw it as a long-term career. I don't think I knew what my long-term career was at all. I think I'm still thinking about that now, to be honest. So I hadn't really allowed myself to, I was always too busy being busy, busy being purposeful and worthy, and what does that mean? And that meant at that particular point in the 90s that I needed to stop wafting around with a paintbrush and go and get myself a job. So I've gone completely off the subject of being inspirational, haven't I?
Well, we knew you would, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, you used to be.
Yeah,
All my stories have about 3 hours trailing. It's like a really bad
We have
joke.
decided if you get to 2 hours, we're just going to cut it.
Yeah.
Just cut her off.
Yeah. We've all heard enough now, Luce.
Talk among yourselves. I'll be still chatting away. But it was very interesting.
She'll get the flute out at some point.
Thank you.
But go on. No, I was quite interested in
now.
that little. I was interested in the tack of where you were going.
had your paintbrushes out, but then you felt that it was expected of you to do something.
I needed to go and be worthy.
Yes.
So I went and got a job in a bank, as one does. And, I know. And I sat there with headphones on. So
What were you actually doing in the bank?
I was an underwriter, so I used to, and it was...
Oh, gosh, so you weren't even seeing people?
No, I was in a tall office block on about the probably about the 6th floor.
Where was this?
This was in Chester, down by the station. And I only went actually for two weeks as a sort of a temporary, an agency, because I didn't know what to do. I'd come out of university with a fine art degree and absolutely no experience in anything practical whatsoever. So it was slightly useless really for a while. So, but I wanted to stay in Chester. I didn't want to go home, so I had to get a job because I had to look after myself. You know, I had to feed myself, pay some rent. So I joined an agency and ended up working for 2 weeks at this bank, and I was there for 8 years. So
You were there for 8 years. I
They
didn't know you were
locked
there
you
that
in
long.
and didn't let you out.
well, I think they wanted to lock me out and not let me in, actually, because I was really not very good at all. So I had to sit there with these headphones on and one of these, speakers, and they taught me to be an underwriter. And it was at the time, so it was before the big crash. So 2007, was that the first one, or was there? It would have been late 90s. It would have been about 95. I was there, showing my age. So and basically, with lots of catalogues, clothing catalogues, and people would phone up for loans, like a £2,000 unsecured loan, and you'd phone up, give you all your credit details, and then they would either say yes or computer says no. But in those days, the computer said yes most of the time, hence the crash. But because the computer, my job was to, this is very boring, I'm very sorry, but my job was to basically, those people, if the computer couldn't find you on the voters roll, or it flagged up that you had some terrible credit problem, you would come through to a human, and the human then would ask you more questions.
And you were that human?
I was that human. There were a few of us. I wasn't the only human. There was in fact, there was a whole
Lucy
office
says
full.
no.
Lucy says no. Lucy's gone to the vending machine and walking back and so I hated it.
How did you do that for 8 years? I cannot imagine you doing that.
No.
I was so
when
bad
Fiona
at it
told
as
us
well.
about what she was doing, at least she was off in airplanes and things.
I know. I was like,
Once.
that's so glamorous.
I can't see you doing that for 8 years. You must have been. Well,
I was demented. I was more demented than I am now, so that's quite
Crikey.
demented, isn't it? Really? Yeah. I don't know. I think I was very young. I was very young. I mean, I was in my early 20s, so I think.
And you need the money, don't you? You have to.
I needed the
earn
money, and I desperately didn't really want to go home. Not because home was awful at all, but it was back in London. I liked being up here. So I, and there wasn't really an awful lot at that point. It was really a few years later I decided that, because I was always creative, obviously, and that never left me. I just kind of pushed it to one side because I didn't see how I could make a living from it at all. But I wasn't thinking outside the box. I was, thinking how society thinks.
But you're just never told about what's around, are you? Though it's just even doing a fine art degree. There's no, I can imagine, not that I've done one. There's no other than just the mainstream things.
Absolutely,
you're just funneled again, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, completely funneled. I mean, I was thinking today actually. Sorry, this is very random. I'm very sorry. This shows you how my restless brain.
We like
works.
it random.
We do.
So, I was thinking today. I was at school. Do you remember at school? They used to do final year. You used to have to, or maybe you didn't do it, but you had to fill out a whole sort of ABC, questionnaire thing about, and it was supposed to tell you what you were going to be good at when you left school. What would be an ideal occupation for you? Do you know what mine was?
No, tell us.
Chicken farm.
What?
I know, exactly.
What did you?
So there you go. So they obviously
How
didn't
did
have
you
high
answer those
aspirations for me, did they? I don't know. Yeah.
Did you say you like chickens?
Did you say you love chickens?
I lived in the centre of London. Well, no, I didn't. I lived on the outskirts of London, but no, we didn't have chickens. Didn't even like them very much.
I can see me coming out as being a chicken farmer, but I'm really struggling.
So that was my aspiration.
Having said that, you have had chickens.
Yeah, I love my chickens now. Yes, maybe they're different. Anyway, so yeah, so there wasn't an awful lot of excitement. There wasn't a sort of, and I think that's really interesting. Actually, I don't know whether it's changed or not.
I fear it hasn't.
But I think it hasn't. There isn't any kind of, oh my goodness, right, you're creative. Okay, so it was either go and be an artist or go and be a graphic designer. There wasn't, any other, but there was, but it wasn't, it wasn't opened up to you. Maybe I just wasn't very inquisitive at that point. I don't know.
No, but I mean, how are you supposed to know when you're younger? How are you supposed to know to ask the right questions? You can only know what you know. But
And especially then, I mean, there was you couldn't even Google or anything. I
No,
mean,
exactly. Yeah.
at least now people have got Google, they've got Instagram, at least there's sort of like worlds opening up in some way.
Yes, I think so. I think it, you know, Instagram, it does open you up to. I mean, so I remember thinking, you know, I want to be creative, and I remember I used to collect, because dad was an antique dealer, and still is, and I used to collect bits and pieces, and I had this fetish for old chairs with slats. And I remember eventually we moved to this little house after I got married, and putting these chairs outside and trying to, because I was a huge fan of all the country living magazines that were around, you know, and still are, but more so then, really. And thinking, and try to take a photograph of them to try and make them look really sort of cool, and you know, and this is back in the 90s, and that was when you had a camera with a film, and you'd send it to Boots, and your thing that came back with a big sticker saying "try harder" over the front, you know. So that was, you know, even that wasn't very encouraging.
Couldn't find anything on this reel.
Exactly. Really bad. It's like, right, okay. So so I stopped at the bank because I just couldn't. I don't know, and I've always been quite slow, really, in that. Not slow as in, but slow as it. Well, probably, but slow as in. I don't know. Things just seem to come to me a bit later, really. So I think I was busy going out with my friend Max, you know, who we've interviewed. You know, we were busy at the races, getting drunk and being silly. And
just the races, getting drunk. Yeah,
exactly.
that definitely conjures up an image, doesn't it?
That's where I met my husband. So, very drunk in the champagne tent. Yeah.
That's a random place to meet your husband, isn't it?
23 years later. So I was at the bank hating it, being really, really quite bad, but they never fired me. I don't know why. Spent all my time looking out the window at the treetops, because that's all you could see with the treetops, thinking, I just want to be outside.
I want to be in the trees.
I want to be in
the
trees.
So apart from photographing chairs with slats
really badly
when you came home from the bank or at the weekends, what did you do to feed your creativity then? Were you painting?
In the garden? No, I didn't paint. The paints were put away for a long time, because I think I decided I wasn't particularly very good, really, and again, I didn't want to be average. I just didn't want to. I just didn't. I've always had this thing. Well, later it sounds a bit pretentious, really, but I'm either exceptional or I'm shit. I don't want to be in that middle bit at all. So, and I decided I was very mediocre. So that all went to one side.
But then, you decided that all by yourself, or did you feel pressure that you were mediocre from other people? Had somebody told you at some point you were mediocre? Or is this all just self-inflicted?
I think it's probably self-inflicted. Yeah.
Because you can never be sure, can you, when you're a child? Somebody gives a passing comment or a throwaway remark, which can actually stay with you for a very long time. I just wondered if you'd had one of those moments.
I was told I was quite useless at school. So I struggled when I was at primary school. I struggled a lot with dyslexia.
By teachers?
Yeah, so... It really shocks me now, actually, because if it ever happened to my child, which it didn't, but gosh. But I was told I must have been, it was just before we went to secondary school, so I would have been about 10, and I just couldn't spell. I couldn't do my times tables. I just couldn't, and I remember the teacher, because we were all one teacher, for one class, telling, we had our 11 plus came back. And I don't think I did particularly well. And he said in front of the entire class something very derogatory, that I was stupid, basically. And that is actually, and it's one of those throwaway remarks, and maybe he saw it as a throwaway remark, but it stayed with me all my life. And I think that's actually what's made me so determined to actually finally prove to him that I'm not. And my spelling improved, and obviously computers came in and you can do spell checks, and I think that part of my brain just matured maybe slightly anyway, so that's not a problem now. But so
did you know you were dyslexic then, or have you found that out subsequently?
I wasn't dyslexic. I
just had those tendencies.
It's probably lack of focus. I don't know. I think Mum bought me a few books, on dyslexia, trying to help. But at that point, it certainly wasn't something that was ever brought up at school. I mean, it really is now. They're on it at school. You would tend to be cast just as a bit slow, a bit thick, Whereas now and that's terrible to tell a child that. You should never ever tell a child that, because even if they can't spell it, does not mean that they have, so many creatives actually struggle with that academic side of things. It's just a different part of your brain, isn't it? But I think that stayed with me, and I was quite a sensitive child, so I think that sort of stayed with me. So I I went to university, and I didn't quite understand it. I wish I could do my degree again now, because I didn't quite understand. So at A level, we had been taught very much that realism kind of painting, so everything looked like something. So and then I got to university, and they sat there sort of, all kind of sort of smoking their thin cigars, talking about mark making. And I'm like, oh, I don't understand. I just couldn't get it. I just didn't get what they were talking about. So I'd go home and make these funny marks. And Mum and Dad would go, that's nice. What is it? It had to be something. So I just couldn't get it. My brain just didn't compute this at all.
And also, it's quite a terrifying thing to do, isn't it, when you're at quite a young age still. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, to make a mark and go, my God, that mark's amazing.
Exactly.
It's a very, you're really putting yourself out there. It's quite a naked thing to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. Absolutely.
Wouldn't you think in that sort of like environment, they draw that out of you? Because just listening to the conversation that we had with Rose, where it was just like, there's no right way of drawing or painting, or just bash something down with a egg splattered on the paper or something, there's no right or wrong. Wouldn't you think they'd have drawn that out of you?
Well, I think they did in a way, because when I look at my pieces now, my final pieces, which I don't think I've got anymore, I think they've gone. Anyway, they were all of landscapes. So at that point, and I now remember that I even had on my final art exhibition, because I painted large, I've always painted large, I had these huge canvases, and my dissertation was on Monet, so they were very sort of that kind of, garden-esque. And I had a hanging basket as part of my final thing. So it was hideous. It was one of those brown plastic hanging baskets with chains, and it had, but it was, when I think that, but there was obviously something there that, the garden was already making its mark on me at that point. But I don't know. I didn't see that I could be creative unless I was actually making paintings and selling them as an artist, as a proper, I didn't see that was a word.
Well, I think probably we're so wrapped up in seeing, I say we, I mean society, so wrapped up in seeing success as equaling a financial reward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously we need money. I mean, that's just the way the world works. But success is so much more than that. It's what fundamentally makes you happy.
But I think isn't it age though that you realise that? I think maybe when you're younger, you just, I don't know. I think maybe you get to 30 and realise actually I'm really not very happy with what I'm doing at all. This is not floating my boat. But at that point, I think you sort of said, how did you stick the bank? Needed the money.
Yeah.
And
bills to pay.
And I remember that eventually, so I met Richard, who worked offshore. So he was earning a fair amount, and then eventually we realised that really he needed to not work offshore anymore. We needed him home. So he took a huge pay drop. So we were really, quite poor, really. We had a mortgage and everything, but, things weren't great, and I needed to work. And so just carried on being really bad in the bank.
But you escaped.
I did escape, yes. So
and then became absolutely amazingly successful in your landscaping business.
That was a slow burn though. But again, I don't think you can jump into these things and become successful overnight, can you?
But you did become successful. You showed that teacher.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, the thing I've been doing most in lockdown, which I'll come to in a bit, has showed the teacher more than anything, I think.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So,
but just to interrupt for 1 minute, people who know you from Instagram might be surprised that you are a landscape. I mean, how do you actually phrase yourself? Is it a landscape architect?
I don't know.
Landscape
I'm not an
gardener?
architect because I don't have the qualifications.
Okay. But I mean, that is your mainstay, isn't it? That is your
So a landscape
profession.
designer is, I've done it for 20 years. So so eventually I escaped the bank, and my lovely husband said, look, you're really not a very happy bunny, are you, doing this? And I had a very tiny, teenager, was only 18 months too. And I had I wasn't a yummy mummy. You know, I needed to be doing something to make me a better mum with him. But in the meantime, going back, my husband, we had discovered gardens, and we'd moved to a little house with a garden, and sort of become, like both of you, like all of us, you know, sort of completely obsessed with gardens. And I thought, gosh, do you know what? I wonder if I could possibly earn some money being outside, which is where I want to be, and being creative. And I had that, let's do garden design. So I went back to college for a year. So sort of we want 1-2 days a week. And a lovely friend had my 18-month-old for the day for me, which was fabulous. And it sort of went from there. And I thought, well, by that stage, I was only working part-time at the bank because I needed to be at home with Matthew. And I thought, well, if I could just get one design a month, that would be the same amount of money as that I'm earning. Because I was doing late shifts, you know, I was doing all these weird shifts, working at weekends and everything, because the bank never shuts, because we just like to give money in. So I went back to college, and I thought I'll just do one. And again, my lovely friend, I did some little hand-drawn topiary trees with a, do you want your garden designed? And we posted them through a load of letterboxes in the village. And one person came back, and she was lovely, and we became great friends. And it was a tiny design and tiny budgets, but it just led to other things. It's, stepping stones.
Do you remember the design? I mean, what was in it?
Yes, very clearly.
Tell us.
Fairly hideous.
Where was it?
So it was in very close to it's in Chester, in Tatton Hall, and it was for a lovely lady who I probably shouldn't mention who it is, really. No. But she knew quite a lot of people. So, but it was literally, it was a really small budget, but gosh, it's mad when I think about it. Gosh, talk about sort of just make it work. So she had a tiny budget, but because people were always quite surprised by how much actually landscaping costs, you know. So it was a substantial amount of money, but it wasn't a lot for, you know, turning a garden. But I designed this deck area because we had a deck, and then this path, gravel path, and it was very simple. Got to start somewhere. And I remember being at the time, do you remember Gardener's World had a show at Birmingham at the NEC every year at that point? And at the college, because I was still at college at the time.
Which college were you at?
Reseath.
Okay, I wanted to go to Reseath.
In Nantwich. And they were doing a garden as part of the show, so I was so excited. So I went and helped, and there was another garden being done, and they had all these offcuts of this cedar decking. So not this horrible grooved stuff, but really, and it smelled divine. I was like, oh my God, if I had that, I could do her deck, and I could actually make this garden work within the budget, because they're just offcuts. So I went and asked, and he basically gave me the offcuts of the deck, and then husband came and with the 2-year-old, and we sat and we made this deck between us, and you know, it was really, you know, very basic, but you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? And then the job slowly became bigger, and
Because you start getting portfolio pictures and you start learning how it works.
Yeah, I still
and
had the
it just sort of
photographs with the try-hards a bit on them.
topiary.
You can't
Still the boots.
imagine how much the iPhone has changed. You know, not like just the phone with a camera.
With a camera,
Not having to, So still thought about my garden chairs and how I needed to photograph them. But yeah, I still had that in the back of my mind. I still had this yearning to, but I just always wanted to create things. You know, I always wanted to, like a theatre set, I always wanted to make something look pretty. You know, I always wanted to
Well, you
make
have
something
done an
look
RHS garden, haven't you, in one of the shows? So how
done
long
a
did it?
few.
I know. How long did it take you to get from that first little garden with your offcuts?
Not that long, actually. So I did the first garden in 2005. So it would have probably been 2 years later.
Gosh.
3 years later.
See, it wasn't quite such a slow burn.
No, I suppose not. So that was, and all of these steps now, you can see how these small steps all lead to.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Which show was it? That's you, and you done
That
this.
was at Tatton.
That was Tatton.
That was at Tatton Park.
Oh, was it? Really? God, I wonder if I went and saw that. Because we used to go to Tatton Park Flower Show.
Yeah. That's the Tatton Park, the first time it ever opened, Tatton Park.
Yeah.
That was really what got me sort of.
What did you do for that one then?
So that one was called an elegance escape. And it was, because I mean, there were tiny gardens, so it would have been, gosh, I can't remember how big it was. Because they were there back to backs. So it was probably 5 meters by 4 or something like that.
So that would be the sort of the equivalent of the Chelsea little courtyard gardens.
Yeah, probably slightly smaller than the artisan
gardens.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And again, it was done on the shoestring, and I, begged, borrowed, and people came and helped, and I got a silver medal for that, and that was my first garden, and I was really disappointed.
Of course, because this is Lucy.
So that was okay.
You didn't win Best in Show.
So the following year, there was a girl that I'd met at college, and we teamed up together, and we did a garden called Out of Africa, and that was a show garden. And we got this amazing company, who I think is still going, down in Sussex, called Blue Tree House. And they basically build tree houses, amazing tree houses. And they came, and we basically called it Out of Africa. So it was the Out of Africa garden. And we got Golden Best in Show for that one.
Oh, there you go. Not to be thwarted.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So this was a much bigger garden then?
Yeah, so this was much bigger. Yeah, that was quite stressful actually. But all these things, have all been quite stressful really, but they've all just pushed you. Pushed you, and pushed you to the next step. So once you start getting gold medals and things, people start to take you a little bit more seriously. So your work improves, your clients improve. And then it was a few more years, and then I got a huge, a brilliant client. Well, they're all brilliant, they're all lovely, but a client with. So the budgets became bigger, the designs become bigger, your sort of, oh my goodness, wouldn't that be amazing, actually become reality, which is a real privilege to be able to do. And again, so I did this one garden in Cheshire, and we turned, I've told people about this before, but we turned 27 acres of potato fields, which he bought off the farmer next door, into a garden. And we were there for 3 years. And I learned so much on that job, and I had an amazing team. Not all mine, I work with a landscape contractor. So between us, we sort of, we did all these 2-acre lakes and irrigation systems that were fed from the lakes, and walled gardens and greenhouses and woodland gardens. And that's where I met Mark from Hortus, and went and bought all these amazing trees and everything. And that was huge. And then it was all encompassing. It completely took over my life. Didn't think about
I guess
anything
Matthew
else.
was still relatively young, was he?
So Matthew was Oh, well, just before that, we had renovated where we live now and moved. So I'd taken him out of an English school and put him into a completely Welsh school because we moved to Wales. Poor child. So he left all his friends at 12 into secondary school, into a Welsh secondary school.
Was it a Welsh-speaking secondary school, or was it
bilingual? So, so big school, but half the school taught in what was taught in Welsh, and half were English.
Because it's quite Welsh around where you are.
It's very Welsh.
It's very Welsh spoken, isn't it? Where you are?
Yeah, lots of families talk. That's their first language at home, but obviously he had no Welsh at all. But but he coped really well. But at the same time that was happening, I was going backwards and forwards to Manchester, which was where this big garden was going on. So it was quite. But you just make it work, don't you? You just get on. So, and then it got to the end of that, doing the house, because it was a huge, complete house renovation and this big garden. And then because I'd spent so much time on the garden, I'd sort of neglected all my other clients. And you sort of think, oh my goodness, what now? And I think I was slightly burnt out as well. I'd given it so much. I almost didn't want to look at another garden. I didn't want to think about, I was like so over that.
3 years is a long time to work on something.
It is a long time. It is a long time, and it was time. It needed to finish. It needed to, move on.
And you're not being inspired by anything else then either, are you?
That's so true. And you do need those different things.
To go back to the original question.
Oh yeah, what was that? Sorry.
Oh, was that the one about 3 hours ago?
So where did you go after that then? Is that when you started to think about
bringing
the outside in?
yeah. I've been outside enough. I've aged about 150 years from the sun, so I need to start being inside a bit. No, so I just, at that point, that was then when Instagram had already started at that point. So Instagram must have been going, now I can't remember when the year was. It must have been I was quite late to Instagram really, so it had been 2017. We'd coming to the end of the garden, and suddenly became aware of this thing called Instagram. And then my lovely sister decided that she was finally getting married to her long-term partner. And over dinner one evening, we were sort of sat around as a family, and she was sort of divvying out jobs, So the husband got to make the wedding cake, which was hilarious because he doesn't make cakes, but anyway, you learn. And
your husband?
Yes, my engineer working offshore husband found himself.
Oh, well, maybe that was it.
Cakes.
You see, he's an engineer, so he must be able to make cakes.
Well, exactly, yeah.
At least it stood upright.
Exactly. And if it didn't,
It was
how embarrassing.
structurally fine. It was. Yes.
Tasted gross, but it stood up.
Aesthetically, not great.
It was never going to tip over in the wind.
And she said, you're good with flowers and plants. She said, you can do the wedding flowers. And I think it was just the right point, because I think I just needed something else that, I just my brain needed something else to sort of focus on. And I was like, okay, that's no problem. I can do that.
Just to go back a step though, I just have to say,
yes,
you are extraordinary because you appear not to thrive on stress from the things you say, but actually you utterly thrive on stress because you've totally skipped over very lightly your whole house renovation, which was pretty significant. Yeah. So you've done that. And then you were also in the thick of 3 years of this, and I've seen the pictures, I know how big it was. And you have a child that you're ministering to. And then you just need something else. Yeah, I can try wedding flowers.
That's not stressful at all.
But it seems to just be a constant. I have to be utterly occupied to capacity.
I think so.
You seem to need to be very full with things.
Yes, it doesn't give the chimp then time to be destructive if I'm totally full all the time. I think that's how my brain works. So but I'm always very curious as well.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to know how. Yeah, I was still desperate to master my chair photographs at that point, and I realised that I think what I loved was actually, I think this is why I loved show gardens so much, because I loved that final thing. It wasn't so much actually the getting there, it was the final picture. It was that final, you know, that's what I visualized. That's why I teamed up with this amazing team of, well, there were pains sometimes, but this amazing team of 30 landscapers, you know, because they could do the bits. I could just say, I need it to look like this. You know,
You could just float around, handing out instructions.
Keep saying that until they finally got it right.
Exactly. Yeah. I wore them down over 3 years. Yeah. It took 3 years to get there, but we did it eventually. You know, so you've got to find people that can help facilitate that, haven't you? But so I did with that. Yeah. So I think, yeah, maybe I'm just slightly hyper. I don't know.
Well, you certainly make me feel very lazy, that's for sure.
Well, I think it is just a restless creativity, isn't it? You know, it's just, it is looking for that permanent, looking for inspiration and different things to float your boat. And I mean, as creatives, you get really stale. That's why I was really surprised that your garden took 3 years, because that's some staying power, isn't it? You know, I mean, I struggle to do something for a week. You know, it's like butterfly brain is just all over the place. But
yeah, I think it's interesting actually, because I think I've got a real butterfly brain, but if somebody gives me a job, if somebody, you know, commissions me and I'm in my got my professional head on, then I will do my very best to do the, you know. So, you know, he was paying me a fair amount of money, and I wanted it to be the very best it could be. So he had my complete and utter focus. But I think that's why I was totally, at the end of it, burnt out, because I was exhausted, because I'd, you know, hadn't allowed my brain to be butterfly at all.
yeah. Yeah.
So did you get stressed doing your sister's wedding, or did you really find that very
I had a really nice
therapeutic?
Because at that point, I've kind of thought, I'm not sure what to do now. So I decided if I was going to do my sister Sylvie's flowers, I needed to learn how to do flowers, because, you know, I could do them outside, but, you know, actually, and I all I knew about floristry at that point was traditional floristry. I knew what I loved outside, but I only really thought, you know, I hadn't given it much more thought than that. I'd never, because I think I wasn't particularly interested in floristry inside, because it didn't really float my boat, you know, from the images that I'd seen.
That's what you were seeing, yeah.
Yeah, that's what was in the magazines, wasn't it? That's what, you know. But at the same time, I then you know, found Instagram and started to find all these wonderful, inspirational people that I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what floats my boat. That's so inspirational. You know, bringing that garden inside. Oh my goodness, I can do that. So I set about learning the techniques, which weren't very inspirational at all to start with, and then eventually did some Instagram courses, because I think at the point they were just starting. You know, Instagram. They were just starting with the Sarah Winwood was starting to do the online courses and everything. So I completely immersed myself in that and met some brilliant people, and just kind of did that. Poor Sylvie's wedding flowers, I'm not quite sure how bad they were, but I love doing it. You know, I love doing those. And then it just sort of went on.
Where did she get married?
So she got married at Middleton Lodge.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where
beautiful.
so I mean, that was inspirational. That was before their kitchen garden was built.
Yes.
So they got married in the main house, but yeah. So what was your question again, Bridge? Sorry.
No, we don't need to worry about that. We will get to that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just jump straight to that, actually? What has been your inspiration through this last year, Lucy?
Having to look it up because she's forgotten.
I don't know, really.
Well,
I don't know. The garden,
yes,
I guess.
but after you did your sister's wedding, which again, I've seen the photos. They were very beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I decided at that point then I was going to become a wedding florist, having obviously no, you know, I didn't know anything about the industry at all. And if I talked to Fiona and you yourself, both strongly at that, if you had both had a strongly worded conversation with me, I might have had different thoughts. But no, I was going to become a wedding florist. So I set all my wheels in motion to reach that goal, and then decided about 3 months later that wasn't for me.
Maybe I don't.
No, maybe I don't. I gave it 2 years. I gave it 2 years, and I still will do.
You'll do the perfect ones that come along.
Yeah, absolutely. But it became more about. I became more obsessed again. Finally, I was photographing my garden chairs. Finally I was...
Yes, she's got to photograph the garden chairs.
And no bugger was sticking a sticker on the middle saying, try harder.
Because when I first got to know you, I was really struck with how we kind of take snaps. I mean, my photography's improved, but right back then, your photography, you were taking that really, really seriously. And you were on a tripod, and it was, everything was
That's
just...
because I drank too much coffee.
But it showed the final image. I think that's where your storytelling really started to come through. You weren't just taking a picture of the flowers. You were trying to, well, I'm putting words in your mouth now. It felt like you were really trying to really infuse a whole atmosphere into the person looking at the picture you've taken.
Yeah, absolutely.
That picture had to tell a very cohesive story.
Yeah.
And you did it so beautifully. And it's only got better and better and better as time's gone on.
Well, I think with photography, I mean, I think I've had to teach myself photography, but I think because I found I could immerse myself and lose myself, it became my way to switch off, really. But to take that photograph, and then, Instagram was amazing, and people were actually liking my stuff, and that was high, wasn't it? Because, that's an adrenaline rush and people like that. So I became determined. I am a perfectionist. I'm my world's worst enemy. So, my own worst enemy. So, I could see that, it had to be right. I wanted it to be, I guess I was bringing what I do outside. So, the bones of whatever were quite architectural in that they're quite straight, and then I wanted the soft, to be a bit more wild, to loosen it all up, really. But the pleasure I got and still get, I haven't done as much this year, but there is a reason for that, which we'll come to later.
Well, shall we mention that now? Because it's like we're doing a teaser the whole time.
Yes.
I think the time has come.
Please, we've got to talk about it, because I can't not talk about it.
One last time. This is your chance, Lucy.
Sorry, you're telling me something, Bridge.
What has been your inspiration?
What have you been doing all lockdown, Lucy?
What have you been doing when you haven't been posting on Instagram?
So funny.
Well, I decided.
Lucy, tell us.
It's a bit scary. I decided that id I'd write a book.
Hey.
She said
Maybe I'd write a book. Maybe I could. Maybe I could show that teacher in my primary school that actually I could write, and actually I wasn't stupid. So, yeah, fingers up.
But it's not just writing a book, is it?
No,
that makes it sound like you're writing a novel.
No, well, you know me, the way I talk, it probably is. I think my poor editor has had a... Cut that section. I said 20,000 words, not 120.
Well, at least you gave her a lot to work with.
Exactly. She's had loads. She knows
So
everything.
how have you found that whole process? Because, of course, again, this is a whole new experience for you. I mean, obviously, we've always loved your stories about the teenager and the husband and Wilf digging holes in the garden and everything. But presumably this is a little bit of a departure from that. And it must have been a whole new learning experience, really.
Well, yeah, I certainly had to up my game slightly, as usual. It's been an enormous learning curve. But oh my goodness, what a privilege. What a privileged to be able to do it. So.
You were approached, weren't you? It wasn't, you just didn't think, I'm going to do this. Or were you not?
No, I thought for a few, people have been really kind on Instagram and have mentioned sort of, oh, write a book. And, you know, the old earworms saying, oh, maybe you could. No, you can't. So when I'm driving, I'm thinking, yes, I can write an amazing book. And then when I'm not driving, I'm earworms telling me I can't. But I don't know. It was just something that grew and grew. But the thought
I guess
there,
also with
in my head.
lockdown, there's no excuse not to do it, really, is there? Because you're not like occupied with anything else.
Yeah.
Like, oh well, I suppose I've really got to
Haven't
face
really got
this
any
one now,
time.
Jim.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. Yeah. So I've got a lovely friend called Rachel Ashwell, who actually came here a few years ago to photograph parts of the house for her book, A Floral Affair. And she came to see me during lockdown, when lockdown was lifted the first time. And we were sort of, you know, she was taking photographs of the house and stuff. And I just mentioned to her over coffee, I've been thinking about writing a book. She said, brilliant. She said, I'll introduce you to my publisher. And so, I mean, that was amazing. So because I'd been thinking about it, I'd done a course on writing a proposal. So, you know, it had been in my head for pretty much all of lockdown anyway. So I'd sort of spent the summer writing, because I couldn't quite understand. My brain couldn't quite, you know, I do these photographs of these flowers and then I write about the teenager. I couldn't quite see how the two were going to ever, you know, link really, make sense to anybody at all, and anybody would want to ever read it. So that took quite a long time. But anyway, so I met Rachel's lovely publisher, Cindy, and from Ryland, Peter Small. Went down to London with my book proposal, and she said yes. So that was a bit of an excited phone call. I remember talking to you both.
Yes, we remember.
Got something to tell you.
But it does feel like one of those things that, you know, if anybody was to ever write a book, it felt like it should be you because of the pictures and the way you write. You know, it was just everything, and even the props that you use in your work. It's not just there for the sake of it. It's you know, it feeds into your background. You know, your dad was an antique dealer. You know, it's all authentic to you. It's not just. I mean, those things that you said, Richard, was it Rachel came and she did those lives, didn't she? Or she did the Instagram. Oh my goodness, they were so beautiful of your house. I'm like, oh my God. And yeah, it's just, if the book is anything like that, it'll be like, oh my goodness. And you know, it just shows how ingrained it is in you. You know, it's just part of you. And I just think it's going to be amazing.
And everything has led to this moment, though, hasn't it? You know, the gardens, the
photography. It feels like that. It feels like everything's come together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what are you going to do next, though, Luce?
Even the chairs.
Let's not worry about that yet. Let's enjoy this moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when's the book out? Can we ask?
It is. So it's available for pre-order now. But it's out on the 11th of October.
So people can pre-order it now?
They can.
Where do they do that?
And any bookseller, I guess. I don't know. You're asking me to. I haven't actually finished the book yet. You're making me video this before I've announced it.
Making you at all? It's been agreed for
I'm
quite some time.
still photographing the gold chairs, girls.
It's actually next week you're going to finish it.
I was going to say, yes. I think the deadline is looming, isn't it?
I think the printers are there waiting to
I'm in
push the button
denial.
next week.
I like to leave everything to the very last minute, as you know. But
You're now
better with a
redoing about 8
stressful
chapters.
deadline. Yeah.
I think they're inking down the presses as we speak.
Yes. Those plates are going on next week, whether you like it or not. They will print something. It'll either be your stuff or
So why are you
something.
talking to us? You need to take a few more photos. I'm certain you're thinking.
It's like the garden. It's like the big garden I did. You know, you sort of become so immersed. Well, you know what it's like. You know, any project you become completely immersed in, and you sort of almost frightened to finish, because it's almost what do I do? You know, I've been working, and this is why my Instagram has been so poor. I do apologise to everybody.
It's not been poor, it's just been quiet.
It's just been nothing
But you've got
posted.
lots of other things to do.
You wait, once this book's launched, oh my goodness, we're going to have so many beautiful images to look at.
Everybody will be bored to death. But, you know, any image I took, you know, I have been working quite hard. I haven't just been, you know, so any images I take,
we know you have.
Publishers have got. So that's why, So that's why I haven't posted anything at all. But
would you do it again? Is it a process you would? I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to.
Some days, some days not. Some days I think, oh yeah, I've really enjoyed this, and I have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it.
Would you have been able to do it if you were working like you were working before lockdown?
No.
No, that's interesting, isn't it?
No.
Would you be able to, now you've been through that process, would you be able to be working, doing normal work, whatever that is, and
possibly
do it going forward?
Yeah, possibly, because I think you understand the process. I mean, I have no idea how a book's made, you know. I mean, Fiona, you've got more idea from your printing days of how the, you know.
Well, you mentioned something the other day, didn't you, about what was happening?
The repro.
And you said it was going to Repro House.
That's right. And then Fiona had to tell us what that was.
I know, what's a Repro House? I thought it was like a big photocopier.
In the old days, the Repro House actually used to scan all the negatives of the whatever picture, you know, they would actually stick it on a cylinder and scan each image, but now it's all way more digital.
That must have taken forever.
Yeah, and it was a really skilled job, all that
I can imagine.
side of things. But so they will be making the plates, I imagine, to go to the printers that will then print it, unless it's all done in-house. It might be in-house, I don't know. Where's it being printed?
I don't know. You're asking me all these questions, I don't know. But
she sends it off, her bit's been done.
Yes, I don't care.
So that is really stressful though, because talk about making it up as you go along. I hope the publisher's not watching this.
When will you get your hands on your first copy? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't. You should have asked me these questions beforehand. No, at the moment, I'm so, because I've taken all the images for it as well. So I've written the thing and taken all the photographs. So the photographs, I've sort of gone from having a sticker from Boots telling me to try harder to actually having them. And that is really quite scary, because you just think, this is ridiculous. You know, do they, you know, I'm still trying to take my garden chairs. And,
now you're the person putting your own stickers on it, saying this is not good enough.
Not good enough. Let's just redo the entire last chapter 2 days
the
before.
Background behind you.
Exactly. Let's just paint a new mural. So but because it, you know, taking images as well, I'd always just saved as JPEGs. You know, I'd always, and that's what you do, and especially if you're posting to Instagram, they need to be, you know, just small JPEGs. But suddenly it was, well, these all need to be TIFFs. What's a TIFF? So, you know, I've learned, you know, a thing, and then my computer sort of grinds to a halt all the time now, because there's all these TIFFs are about 180 megabytes each, and there's thousands of them on my computer.
You've got 100,000.
Exactly. The computer's like, you're having a laugh, aren't you? So so it's been fascinating. Some parts of me, I wish that we hadn't been in lockdown, obviously, like everybody in the entire world. Because
flower availability, I would imagine.
Flower availability has been difficult, and I think the thing that's been most difficult, though, actually, really, what we talked about at the beginning is the inspiration. Because however beautiful your garden is, however beautiful your home is, I get so much inspiration from being with other people, seeing other things, driving down the motorway, looking at the embankment, you know, just ridiculous things, looking at the pavement, but just, you know, architecture and traveling as well, you know, traveling abroad and stuff. So I get to the end now, we're just starting to come out of lockdown, and gosh, oh my goodness, you know, you feel like you've been released. Well, we have, haven't we? Released from this, you know, so that's been a bit tricky to try and keep that kind of oomph going, I think. And then the other thing as well is that, you know, I love, and what I've discovered I've loved more over the last few years is the collaborations with people. You know, that really, I think when I was much younger, I felt that everything I had to do myself, you know, it had to just be me, but actually you can get so much more from working with other people.
Absolutely.
And you know,
And it just makes it more pleasurable, doesn't it? You know,
really
and just
does.
you
Really
can
does.
bounce off each other, and,
Yeah,
and when
exactly.
one's up, the other can, you know, the brain can go and think, or having a down or whatever. It
Yeah,
just makes a massive difference, the dynamic.
yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, I suppose doing a book and you doing the photography and the writing, that wasn't going to be so collaborative, but in a different time, you'd have been able to go and see your publisher. You'd have physically
Yes.
been able to sit across
Exactly,
a table from each other and look at your images and things. And I guess
Yeah.
you just haven't been able to have any of that either.
Yeah, no, exactly. Really. And I'd had this kind of dream that I would, you know, go and see people in other parts of the world and, you know, do photographs with them and collaborate with them. And, you know, I don't know, it's just, you know, and that's not happened. And, you know, gosh, don't
That's
get
the
me
next
wrong,
book. That is
I was
the next
just going
book.
to say, that's the next book. There's your next book waiting for you. What's this book called anyway?
The Flower Hunter, that's original, isn't it? The Flower Hunter. So it's very much about it's about gardens, connecting with the landscape, bringing the outside in, but also creativity and also allowing yourself to be creative, I think, and finding ways to not listen to that chimp on your shoulder and giving yourself time to grow. And yeah.
What would be your, to anybody who completely gets what you're talking about, that chimp on your shoulder? I mean, some people won't understand what that is, but
it's the negative voice in your head telling you.
How would you tell or encourage somebody to try and fight that voice and move forward and be inspired and find their creativity and allow it to happen? I mean, what's your trick apart from driving?
Well, honestly, that really, really helps. You know, I don't think the chimp's ever going to go away, ever. You know, I'm always going to have that little voice in my head saying, really, Luce, really? Really? You think you can write a book? You having a laugh? You can't even spell love, you know. So that's never going to go away. But as you say, it's learning to deal with it and to just very gently say to it, actually, you know, I think I'm okay, actually. I think I'm all right. And I'm not going to be brilliant at this, but I'm going to give it my best shot.
But you'll be working with people who can, you know, if you can't spell properly, and I'm sure you can, but, you know, there are people behind you that check that, and that's the whole editing process. And,
yeah, exactly.
You know, and you don't have to do that. You're doing way more than most people anyway. Just, I mean, writing and photography is a lot.
Yeah. But I don't think you should be too hard on yourself.
No,
you know,
says Lucy.
Oh, I know. Well, it's easy to say.
But I think it's quite interesting hearing you say that, though, because I think that's very encouraging. Because I think actually very many creatives are very hard on themselves.
Yeah,
and
it's part of it. I think.
Knowing that you have struggled with that chimp all of your creative life, but it hasn't held you back. You may feel like it has done. You may feel like it's slowed you down, but actually, your successes have been tremendous. I mean, if you just list things we've talked about today, and I know there's other things as well, but, you know, the amazing garden, the RHS gardens, the gold medal, the best in show. I mean, how many people can list these things? Yeah, I'll just do my sister's wedding, and oh my God, I'm going to knock it out of the park and look like I've been doing it for a million years. And then I'm going to write a book, and my photography is going to be awesome. It's just like, I am actually just going to nail it. That chimp must go creeping away into the corner quite often thinking, I just don't know what I have to do, but she's unstoppable. Yeah.
No, because I think the chimp just gets louder, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely sleepless nights, definitely high levels of anxiety and stress. But
it's quite exposing, isn't it, doing something like that as well? And it's, I mean, we've talked about it before, haven't we? It's almost like that tall poppy syndrome, you know, it's just popping your head up above the parapet almost, and, you know, you're there waiting for people to knock you down. And
no, absolutely. And my body's certainly feeling that at the minute. Hugely.
Well, I can imagine it's sort of like prime time at the moment, because you're just about to sort of like send everything
pop
off.
Your head above the parapet. You've just done it just now. I know. But we're very proud of you, Luce. You do know that, don't you?
You've been amazing. You've been amazing pals, amazing friends.
Well, we just can't
Say-
wait to
keep
see it in all
saying-
its glory.
Listening to all my rubbish, just say, Lucy, just get on with it. Whatever, love.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So,
It's going to be amazing, and it will fly. I know it will.
Oh, well, bless you. I hope so.
I actually think
If
what
you
what
both
you've
buy a
said,
copy,
though,
at least I'll sold two.
you're not giving us
Yeah, I
one.
was going to say, you're not getting one for free.
God's sake!
All this earache we've had for months.
Oh, go on then. I'll
All
even
those a
sign
full
it.
year.
I'll sign it for you too. The big
Oh,
kiss.
thanks.
Oh, thanks. I actually think people will find what you were saying about the chimp, though, really, really helpful, because I suspect that people will look at you and think, Lucy's got it all. She's got beautiful pictures. She can write beautifully. And I bet people aspire to do your sort of stuff. And to hear that you've got those, and we all have, we all have, obviously. But I think it just gives people a bit of encouragement. It's like, you're not the only one. We all have it. And
I just think you
how you
have
manage
to.
it.
You have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Be authentic. Always be authentic to you, and just have a go. And what's the word? And I think lockdown is, this whole pandemic has really brought home of, you've just got
you were about to
take
say
the
that. What's the
moments.
worst that can happen? And we've said that so much this last year, haven't we? Between ourselves, when we've been chatting, it's like, oh, what's the worst that can happen?
Yes.
And frankly, after this year, you do think, well, what is the worst that can happen? Because this has been quite bad. So,
And there's no point in thinking about things sometimes. I think you just have to, don't overthink it, just give it a go.
I think overthinking is the actual thief of any creativity, isn't it? And, just the more you can just do it and don't think it's got to be perfect before we do it. I mean, I know it's different, but look at what we've done with the Restless Creatives. We literally launched straight into it, not knowing anything.
While I'm trying to write a book.
to write a book.
Yeah, while you're trying to write a book.
Yeah, you've got that deadline coming, Luce. Well, actually, we've got something a bit more important we want you to do tomorrow.
Could you just do a YouTube banner? I can't tell you what dimensions it is. A few pixels.
But could you just do it?
You just draw a logo for us. That'd be lovely. Yeah.
No, it's been brilliant, actually.
We were just
It's
trying to
been really
distract
good
you.
Yeah, no.
I think it was your idea in the first place.
Yeah,
Well, I know, but you know me. I probably had too many glasses.
Oh! And on cue.
God, is it that time already?
No, but you were starting midday, so I...
Did you say? And when I say I've probably had too many glasses, you can come in.
He's been stood there for 3 hours, hasn't
I
he?
promise you, that was not scripted. That's terrible. What
That was
time is it?
impressive.
That's so funny. It's 9:30 at night.
It's lunchtime. No, it's
Actually, I wonder
It's
if it
11 o'clock in the
might be
morning.
time for our TRC 5.
TLC 5, yes. So you're going to start, Bridge.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Right,
You start
go on
and
then.
I'll finish.
Okay. Oh, crikey.
Oh no!
Now I'm going to do a Lucy, except I've already got my glasses on.
Hang on, let me just down this glass.
Well, I'm going to ask you this one because I just think this could be hilarious. Or you might just completely
Hilarious.
stuff it and it won't be a good question at all. I'll have to ask you another one. But I'd love to know if you had a free afternoon, what you would do. What would you do, Lucy, to just allow yourself to relax and enjoy yourself for a free, totally free, unburdened afternoon?
I'd go and stand in my greenhouse and sow some seeds, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I
a
think so.
lovely thought.
Yeah, I think I'd do that because at the minute I don't have I haven't been really in the greenhouse much. Or paint another mural.
You're already doing that at the
Yeah,
moment.
exactly, and that's for work.
Well, I'm just
This
going
is
to
for your
jump in
pleasure.
there.
I quite like reading. I quite like reading a book, and I'll read something. I'm not very good with all these very posh books. I used to remember when I was much younger, I wanted to pretend that I was really clever because I'd been told I was daft. So I used to read these really in-depth books, you know, with really long words that you don't understand, but makes the author sound really clever because they've used really long words. And I used to, and I could never read them. So, because I just
So it
found
ended
them
up
really
reinforcing
boring.
what they'd told you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was really depressed. So now I just read an amazing like crime novel, something, you know, just really, and I love that. So just
But you know, I really agree with you. You know, it's wonderful. If you're reading for relaxation, why would you put yourself through the torture of reading something a bit convoluted?
I don't
Give yourself some good old dialogue that you can get your teeth into.
Exactly. Yeah. So I read a good old Peter James or a Dan Brown, or read about people racing through
A book
Venice.
that you just can't put down.
Yeah, love that.
Oh, there's nothing better than that, is there? It's just like, I just need to go and read my book. It's,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like an addiction, isn't it?
It
And
is.
then somebody says what you're reading, and that's when you don't want to tell them because you think,
Exactly.
oh no, you're really going to judge me because
I
it's
know.
not Middlemarch.
I know. I need to think of something really highbrow and intelligent to say, and I can't. It's Peter James. About murder. Yes, there you go. So that I would take my book into the greenhouse. That's
Okay.
what I would do.
And so seeds.
Well, on that note, I'm just going to ask you a quick question that carries on from that. What plant did you last plant in your own garden?
I replanted a rose that was in the wrong place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which rose, do you know?
It was actually a rose from Chelsea, from when I did the Chelsea
The
thingy.
letters.
Oh, we didn't
Yes.
even talk about those.
No, I was going
Yeah.
to.
And yeah,
We've not
so-
mentioned that.
No, see, I told you there was a whole list of things.
So, and they were in a pot. So, and when I brought them home, and I put them in completely the wrong place because it's a rambler. Which one is it? I think it's Gentle Hermione.
Oh, that's
Or-
beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's that, or the Gentle Gardener. I can't remember, but it's one of those, and it's completely the wrong place. So I've moved it. So that was the last thing I moved.
To a generous gardener.
Generous Gardener
Mm.
and Gentle Harmony. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was moved last weekend, and I keep looking at it because it was just on the cusp of being able to move it. It was just, you know, I think I just got away with it. So
Oh, well, my poor plants get moved at any time of day,
Do
night,
they?
year, or anything. That's
Do
just
they?
like, you're just going, I'm sorry.
do they live?
Some of them do.
It's survival of the
Funny
fittest.
enough, yeah,
It really
I remember
is.
seeing that one again.
It's like, oh yeah, maybe that's why things don't survive quite so well. Anyway, sorry, Bridget, just thought that sort of tied on from that last
That does
question.
tie on beautifully. Yeah.
So do you want to ask the next one?
Shall I? I would like to know. Right, this could be a quick one. Summer or autumn?
Autumn.
Oh, right, you're
Early
gonna have to
autumn.
expand. What? That was just too blooming quick.
Early autumn. The end of summer into autumn. Can I say that's both? Sorry. You know.
Where there's warmth, but it's feeling
Indian
autumnal,
summer.
yeah.
Indian summer.
Yeah.
I think when the colours start to soften, it's not bright. You don't have to screw your eyes up anymore to see outside with the sunglasses, but it's warm still. I adore that. And then all the colours start to change. Definitely my favourite time of year. Definitely. But tinged slightly with a oh no, winter's coming, and I don't really like.
Yeah, that's the only thing about autumn is I think it was more when I was working as well. I used to not really like autumn because it just felt like it was going to be
It's
6
short.
months of dark, and when you're working in an office, you don't see daylight, and it's that, I
know.
actually don't feel that as much anymore.
It's funny, I spent years not liking autumn because my mum always used to say, oh, well, I love autumn. I love the look of autumn, but it just means winter's coming. So,
But that's the
when you
end,
hear
and
that
it's
all of the time, you start to think, well, yeah, that's true. But actually, when you do have the chance to be outside all of the time, you even realise that winter's beautiful.
Right,
Same
yeah.
way. Jolly chilly.
Well, it is, but it'd be nice
I mean,
if
it's
winter
not
was
the
just
same.
like 3 weeks, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been a particularly tricky winter this
It's been
year,
a
hasn't
long
it?
winter this year. Really cold and
In
muddy.
all senses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So answer
Right.
your question.
Go for it, Fee.
Have you answered yours? Have you asked yours?
I've asked two.
Okay.
Okay. I've just answered it.
So, So, tell us something very unexpected about you.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, I've
can
shared
play the
plenty of
flute.
unexpected stuff about me. Yeah, yeah, but you've mentioned that before.
That's my party piece.
When did you learn to play the flute?
At secondary school.
Are you going to indulge this, are you? Come on then, tell us about the flute.
Go on then, Luce, tell us all about the flute.
But do you know what's interesting? And I know this is not interesting at all, but that I can't read music. Well, I can read music, but I can't read it fast enough. My fingers play faster than I can read it. So I would play from ear. So everything I would play by ear. Because, and I think it was to do with the spelling, the dyslexia thing, that I couldn't read, I couldn't do that. So I remember once, I quite liked it. I had a good sound, apparently. Notes were all in the wrong bloody order, but, the sound was good. So
pure notes.
They were pure something. But I remember my parents, they must have been desperate, bless them, because they were both, Dad was still teaching, so and Mum was working full time. And I must have been that awkward teenager, and it was the half-term holidays, and they needed to do something with me, So they packed me off to the local grammar school where they were doing orchestra week. You see, wow, I was awful. I was so bad. I hated it. I had all that flashback to being at primary school, and I couldn't spell, and I was stupid because they knew, because everybody, they were all, they all were there with their cellos and their things, and then a few flautists. And I was playing along, and once I'd learnt the posh piece of music, once I'd learnt the tune, I could play it, but I couldn't read the music. But they could all read the music really, really well. So I would play the wrong notes, and they'd be like, right, somebody's playing the wrong note, right, I want you to all play minus E. And I was thinking, oh God, minus E? What is it? What's that? They'd go round and my heart would be going like this. I'd be so sweaty. My fingers would be slipping off the flute keys.
Oh, God.
I hated it. And then we had the final thing was that all the parents came to the auditorium for the final show, on the Saturday. And I mimed the entire 2 hours.
You're like a child who was told they had to stop singing but could keep opening their mouths.
Exactly, that was me. So I was like that the whole time. There you go. So that's quite a surprising thing. So don't ask me to play the flute. I can play Addie's song. That's about it.
Oh, I love the flute. I think that the flute is the most beautiful sound.
It is. It's just hauntingly delicious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a flute sitting here waiting for you. I don't play, but Em played for a bit. So next time you come loose, yeah.
Oh no.
You can have a little.
That's so funny.
You just happen to have a flute lying around.
Yeah. Got a flute
That's one does. I think mine's in the loft. Getting dusty.
Oh dear.
So is that counting as your something unexpected then?
Yes. Okay. Or does that not count? Do you want something more?
Yes, no, it's
no,
fine.
You can have that. I like that. That was a good answer.
Yes, it was good.
Right. Antiques or flowers?
Oh, she's gone quiet.
Oh, that is really difficult.
See, she was waiting for us to say arranging or gardening.
Oh, that's so mean. I do love objects. I do love, but they're both that you can't ask me to separate, can you? Really? Because I put my flowers in my antiques. So how can I have one of the? That's just mean, Bridge. That means I have to do bouquets forever.
Oh, why are you choosing flowers?
No. I was just saying if I did, then I'd have to do bouquets forever.
Or you could do flowers in a candlestick with a plastic thing stuck on the top of it, like I did a couple of weeks ago.
I
Look
could.
at Lisa's face. It's like, no, you're all right.
Yeah, she's like,
I'll stick to my antiques.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Just use a bucket. I think probably flowers, because if I didn't have flowers, I wouldn't be outside, and that's pretty much a core of who I am, really. So I think I have to choose flowers.
That's really interesting. I couldn't have called that one because I know they're both so fundamental to you. I couldn't.
I think it's a really mean question, actually, and The doorbell's going and I'm not answering. That's it.
So sorry. I've got somewhere else to be now.
Yeah. Talk to the hand.
Oh, it's been lovely hearing all about you.
Yes, it has. But I think
I'm
we've
not bored
unearthed
yet.
more that we need to find out about, frankly.
Yeah.
Perhaps we will have to give her a second episode.
No, don't do that. This one's been stressful enough. I'll have nothing interesting to tell you next time. That's it. You know everything now there is to know about me. It's quite boring, really. I'll still be trying to take the deck chairs in the garden.
Have you got any pictures of the chairs in the book? Just literally a picture of chairs.
I've got chairs within an arrangement. Not in the arrangement, but, by the side of an arrangement.
As you threw it in.
Yeah, not the garden chairs that I had. I think they fell apart. They probably weren't even very nice, really. I wonder what happened to them.
Can't answer that.
Well, we've enjoyed
Yes,
torturing you this afternoon.
Yes.
I thought you had, yes.
Gosh.
No, it's been really lovely. Really lovely.
It has.
Thank you. Can I go now?
Yes,
Yes.
you go now. Thanks for being lovely. And we can't wait to see the book.
Oh, thank you. I
Pre-order
can't
now.
wait to finish.
Not finished.
Have a lie down.
Right, we'll let you go.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye. And she's gone.
You've been listening to the Restless Creatives podcast. To ensure you don't miss our next episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Restless Creatives podcast. If you'd prefer to listen rather than watch us, you can catch us on one of your favoured podcast providers. For more sneak peeks and behind-the-scenes fun, visit our Instagram at the.restlesscreatives or visit our website, therestlesscreatives.co.uk.